I wanted to go over a brief introduction about BTG. My name's Alicia, one of the co-founders of BTG. And today I want to discuss what BTG is, the history, a little bit about the history of BTG, how it can help you individually and improve your relationships. So basically, our objectives for today is to provide you with a clear understanding of what BTG is, the practical applications of our methods, and to answer any questions that you might have. So if you have any questions and you haven't been able to submit them ahead of time, you can go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat. So a brief history of BTG. Sean and we had a breakthrough about 3 years and 9 months ago, and it had been a period of 15 years, about 14 years of just a lot of turmoil. It had really hit a big head. It had been like 6 or 7 years where it was just really unbearable. And we were kind of just hammering our hands with a hammer over and over again. And we knew something had to change. We believed that it was a gift from God and that it was a divine download. So when it happened, we didn't know why it worked, but we just knew that it did. Then the last 3 years and 9 months, we have been researching and testing that have created the BTG program today. And so that is what's gone on. Now, we started with 2 tools that were helping my husband, and now we have a whole lot more. Originally, the focus was on relationships, and that was just neurodiverse relationships. And now our focus is really switched to focusing on the individual, because when you focus on the individual and you help to enhance and heal the individual, you're able to then have a healthy relationship with other people. It starts with the individual first, and that's the most important thing. Does anyone have any questions about that before I start talking about anything else? The core concept of BTG is what we call neural bridging. Now, that is something that is a new term, so people don't always know exactly what it is. But this is, if you think of your brain like your mind as if it's like a map filled with different boxes or neural networks that manage different aspects of your life. BTG helps you navigate this map more effectively. All of our tools are scientifically backed, ironically. When it first happened, we had no idea and we didn't know. We just kind of got lucky. And I think that was just because it was God giving us that gift. So basically, back when we first had our breakthrough, I was able to see a perspective that I'd never seen before of Sean. And because I was able to see him so clearly and understand how he operated at his core, I was able to actually give him tools that he had been looking for his entire life. I finally understood the depth and scope of the way he was processing in his world. So it was basically a series of questions and a chart that allowed him to process scenarios and experiences that didn't make sense previously. And he could do it in record time. This effectively allowed him to process a lot of stimuli that he hadn't been able to process, that had been weighing him down. And it also kind of gave him an area of his brain to be able to process it to. And so when we talk about these boxes are just neural networks in the brain responsible for processing and filtering different areas and types of stimuli. And we help people learn where they're operating from and help them see what they could be operating from. So basically, we help you see your black and white perspective and then show you the color perspective. That's essentially the framework we work with. Every box that we discover, everything that we have since been able to plug it into that framework, that black and white perspective aligned with the color perspective. Now, lately, we've made the switch from relationships to individuals. We just changed the name of the group to be Bridging the Gap. Welcome to your Neuroverse. Now, a neuroverse is basically like the universe within your mind, and it's complex and everything kind of just interworks together, and no 2 neuroverses are the same. And that's where this concept of brain types come in. Basically, everyone has their own unique brain type and they're all processing differently. And when you have 2 neuroverses colliding, it causes problems in the relationship. And if you don't understand your own neuroverse, you're going to be walking around a lot more confused. So basically, what we do is we help people also understand their brain type. So what it does is it helps people to unlock just a deeper level of understanding about yourself and the people around you. Ideally, we want people to learn about themselves and about their partner, their loved one. As you're learning about your brain type, you're going to learn about the boxes pertainable to your specific brain type. What constitutes a brain type would be the different boxes that you either have activated or don't have activated within your brain. We help people understand first that they have this neuroverse going on in their brains, and then we help them recognize it, and then we help them see the tools that they have access to. So basically, we show them more boxes that they're able to have access to. So we identify your black and white boxes. These are like your brain's kind of default settings. Your black and white boxes, they live in your subconscious. This is what guides everything for your subconscious processing. So like, this is where you are kind of responding to something automatically, and this is how you react to something. You might not know why you act a certain way, and you might get frustrated with yourself. I know there's been a lot of people where they're so frustrated that they get angry about something and they can't stop a negative cycle or a negative pattern, and they don't realize that the reason they're doing that is because their brain is giving them two options at their subconscious, and that's the black and white perspective. So when we locate the color boxes, these are the neural networks that have become disconnected from your overall cognitive framework. If you have this brain and they're all supposed to be connecting to each other, the color box got disconnected. So you're only operating with those two in regards to that area. So while they contain valuable perspectives and processing capabilities, they're often ignored or inaccessible. This is due to something called cell danger response. We provide techniques to help locate these color boxes in your neural landscape. Once we help people understand where they're operating from, it helps to orient them. As we orient you and you learn about the new place, the new box to use, it helps you to instantly rewire. You're not going to be struggling forever trying to strong arm your own brain to shut off a natural mechanism. What you're doing is you're going with the flow of your brain. You're just teaching it about the other option. And once it is aware of it, it will actually start to use it. So another aspect is that BTG is a holistic integration. It's not about just activating a single color box, but it's about how all your boxes work together. This helps you for processing your information, managing your emotions, and making decisions. Now, how this applies to you in the real world is with your boxes identified and engaged, you'll find it easier to navigate the real world scenarios, whether it's resolving conflicts or improving your relationships. This helps you make everything more fluid, everything more easy. You're able to respond in a more simplistic and easy way. It doesn't feel like you're always climbing an uphill battle. We do this through personal processing worksheets and communication companion worksheets. This is how BTG can help me. We help you learn how to use your boxes, how we help you to stop what we call drowning for yourself. When we help you get to a better place, help you become more stable, you can think about focusing on helping somebody else. But it's super important for you to be focusing on yourself and yourself only in this process. Now, this doesn't mean we want you to disconnect from people. This doesn't mean we want you to just throw people away. But what we want you to do is we want you to just focus on getting yourself good so that you can then come to the relationship as a healthy individual. Here's some benefits of learning how to activate your boxes in your brain, which are the neural networks that are not being accessed right now. Enhanced decision-making. When you identify your black and white boxes and integrate your color boxes, you're going to discover that your decision-making becomes easier. Life is less stressful. You have a broader access to a range of perspectives and problem-solving strategies that you didn't have before when it was that binary black and white. You're going to have improved relationships. When you understand your own neural landscape and that of others, it's going to help you understand and create more meaningful connections. So you're going to be able to understand yourself the way you're processing, but it's also going to help enlighten you to the way your spouse or your children are processing. You're able to have more compassion and more love, and that's going to enable you to be present, to be connected, and to be able to foster more deep and meaningful relationships. Emotional well-being. So gaining control over your previously disconnected neural networks means that you get to gain control over emotional responses that you might not have even realized were affected. You'll maintain more of an emotional equilibrium and manage your stress, and just being happy will be more of a regular experience versus more of a rare experience. Optimize productivity. This was really exciting for me when I got my first box. When we first had our breakthrough, it was just Sean, and I was finally cluing in, and I saw, you don't have this in your brain. And I was able to give him the exact instructions that he had been craving all this time. He kept asking people, how do I do the thing that you're asking me to do? And everyone will say, just do it. And he was like, but how? And they would just say, just do the thing. And to him, it just didn't compute, and it didn't compute, and nothing was ever written in his language. So all the therapists, all the different modalities, nothing was written in his language. When I finally understood the language that he was speaking, which is the language of logic, he has to manually process in this world. So when I realized that, and that was the framework of where he was operating from and coming from, I was like, oh, you just need to make logical sense of anything and know where to put it. You just need to know the purpose. Oh my gosh, that's it. It's that simple. I gave him a set of instructions, that chart, and told him there was a place in his brain for that. Because I said, well, I have a place in my brain for that, and this is what it's called, and this is how you use it. Well, he actually asked, well, how do I know what goes there? He was a little bit agitated when I first told him, because he was like, well, how do I know what belongs here? He was just asking for a set of criteria to know what qualified to go to that headspace and what qualified to be processed there. So I shared that with him, and it gave him immediate mental relief. Now, that was the enrichment box. The second box that we got was the beyond control box. And he was like, oh yeah, well, what about things that are just crappy, that are, that I don't like? And he actually came up with that on his own. It was kind of like he was able to, once his mind relaxed, because it was so stressed out over all those things that were enrichment, and enrichment is supposed to be enrichment for others, not enrichment for himself. Now, he had his own box of enrichment for himself, and that was his me box. So he was living with two boxes to sort the world. At his core, he was operating from what made sense, which is anything that he could understand and relate to, and what doesn't make sense. And that was the trash bin. If it didn't make sense, things kind of got thrown away. Even if he didn't want to throw it away, subconsciously his brain made it get thrown away. But what happened was he was throwing away things that didn't belong, like in the trash. So that was the problem. That is what caused the actual problem in his life. Now, if he could have lived in a bubble, he would have been fine. He could have just isolated himself and prevented himself from having a lot of mental problems, mental strife. But the problem was he couldn't live in a bubble. He was living with all of us in a tiny little house. We were working 24/7 with each other, doing the cake business. We weren't sleeping for 3 days at a time. It was extremely stressful, and all of our children are neurodiverse. So because of that situation, he really was completely stressed out 24/7 to the max, because he had no escape. There was no way for him to just go and decompress or anything like that. It was like living in this never-ending, like, road trip is what my mom called it. She called it like the never-ending road trip, our old house. It was just super tiny, and we were all on top of each other, and we could never get a break. So because of that, it was just this constant barrage of information that his brain was not able to support, and most of it had to do with his loved ones. And so because of that, that's why the enrichment box helped him to be able to process so much and give him so much relief. Once his brain got that relief, it started to turn on more neural networks. And I believe that's why the beyond control box, he was able to start to think, well, there's got to be a place for things that I don't like too. If there's a place for things that I do like, which is the people that I love. And so then we came up with the criteria for the beyond control box and how to sort. And the thing that is really difficult in all of this was that my brain was automatic. So it was so hard for me because my brain would just automatically sort to those places. In this process, what I had to do was I had to stretch my brain out and pay attention to every single process that my brain would do in order to qualify it to go to that place in my brain. lucky for me, with the first example with the enrichment box, it was like God bopped me on the head and stretched out my thought process and said, look, this is what you do in order to make a decision based on the people that you love and everything like that. And he walked me through this logical sequence and showed me exactly what I did automatically in my brain. So I automatically process logic. I don't automatically process emotions, or I didn't. To him, I looked a bit crazy. And to me, he looked crazy too. We were both kind of living in these opposite sides of our neuroverses. And that's why we were so far away from each other and why the divide was so big. What we were trying to do was bridge this invisible gap that we didn't know was there, and we didn't know how to even make sense of it. And it felt like we were just across the universe, yet we were right there. This made us both feel isolated, alone, and disconnected. Once he learned about his boxes, it was able to kind of relieve this overall global overwhelm that was causing so much stress and strife. And not only was he able to relax so that other areas of his brain were able to come back online, but he was able to process me finally. So he was finally able to process me in a way that didn't make his brain explode. And he finally was able to have peace. So he was able to merge our worlds together without harming himself. And so all the things that I had been asking him to do that had previously been blowing his brain up didn't blow his brain up anymore. We worked from home doing a cake business. My mom lives across town. We were so busy. We honestly couldn't even take care of the kids like we needed to take care of them when it came to a certain point in the week. So if this was Thursday and we had cakes due Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometimes they were due on Thursday, I could foresee and know that we were not going to be able to, like, my brain could automatically see and evaluate and risk analyze the fact that we were not going to have enough time, energy, anything to be able to get this stuff done. And two, also take care of kids. Our youngest was in diapers. He needed to be diapered and fed. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. There was times I wasn't even able to sleep or go to the bathroom all day long because I was so busy. There was plenty of times where I slept for 15 minutes a night for 3 days, woke up Thursday morning, didn't sleep till Sunday night. When my mom would ask if the kids could sleep over or do something fun or whatever, in my mind, my brain automatically said, oh yeah, this is great because we'll be able to focus on work, we'll be more efficient, be able to get it done, and they'll be able to get the care that they need and they'll have fun. So they don't have to be sitting here suffering with us. Now for Sean, he was manually processing his logic. So for him, he didn't automatically run those diagnostics and see all the stuff that he needed to be able to do in order to come to the same conclusion I did. So he was caught way back over here. If I asked him if the kids could sleep over at my mom's, it would take him like a good 3 days. So he would be really nervous about saying yes before that 3-day period because it would take him 3 days to make sure that he had checked all the variables. And that was causing a lot of his anxiety too, in regards to the social situations and being able to process. Now, because I was manually processing my emotions, what he saw on the outside is an emotional creature making very rash decisions. So he could not trust me and my decisions. So no matter how great my decisions were, and no matter how much, like how good they were and everything, he couldn't trust them. He was dead set on trying to figure it out on his own. So we even had a rule that he had kind of instilled a few months before our breakthrough that said, no, I need 3 business days. It was a joke, but it wasn't a joke because I had tried to push for answers. If I tried to push for answers before he was ready, it would literally make his brain blow up and he would melt down. It would cause a meltdown. And for me, I was just like so bewildered because I'm thinking, okay, this can't be serious. He can't really need this much time. I'm looking at this from a perspective of this is a luxury. You don't really need 3 days to think about this. But for him, he really needed to do that. Not that one decision would actually take him 3 days, but it was adding it to all the other manual processing that he was actually doing that would require that time for him to be able to accommodate that question. So for him to be able to come to a conclusion that allowed him to do that.
Okay.
So that was just a sample of what it was like when he had just those 2 boxes, because if it didn't make sense to him, he needed to then manually do that work for himself. Now, when he got the new box, the enrichment box, he was able to see this matters to my loved ones. My loved ones are going to be able to also be taken care of. Their well-being will be able to be handled. They'll be able to be attended to. We'll be able to work. He was able to run through this process in just a matter of seconds. So it took something that took 3 days and took it down to like 3 seconds. So it was nothing short of a miracle. We didn't know why this worked. We didn't know that we were neural bridging it, but we were ecstatic. We use each box as a way for someone to process, whether it's to apply it to themselves or what they're observing. The other side of many of the boxes, we actually have what's called communication companion. So for example, if you wanted to connect with your spouse, you would use the loved one request form, which is the communication companion for the enrichment box. And we're changing the name from the enrichment box to the loved one box, just for simpler understanding for people. We've had that name for the last 3 years and 9 months, but it has actually caused more confusion for people than anything because they think it's their own enrichment. But we're actually going to change it to loved one box. So basically, the loved one box, that old enrichment box, is where they store all their loved ones and everything that their loved ones care about, their loved ones' emotions, their loved ones' desires, their loved ones' everything. And they're able to process it with a series of questions and the chart that takes something that was super abstract, such as their well-being, right? All the different areas of their well-being. And when you can effectively rate or gauge the impact something will have on your well-being, you can see that something that you're observing or something that's being asked of you is actually safe and not a threat. But because he couldn't actually do that before, he was having to manually do it, which was too abstract and took too much mental energy. It was making it so everything was deemed as a threat. So even things like, can the kids go over to my mom's for a sleepover, was deemed as a threat, even though we actually needed it. It was free babysitting. They got to go get taken care of, everything like that. It was still deemed as a threat to his brain because he couldn't actually process it and couldn't make sense of it. Once he was able to make sense of it, he was able to just let it go and see, oh yeah, that makes sense. So that's how it's could be used with your practical applications. So you have a box, you're able to use the worksheet, it walks you through the simple questions, and it helps you process what's going on. All of our boxes are applicable to both logical processors and emotional processors and the combinations of the two. The different brain types right now, they're called mani, hyper, delta mani, and a delta hyper. And then there's auto processors. How can it help my relationship? That is the next question. So something that is super important, understanding your own boxes allows for better communication and empathy between yourself and your partner. If you understand yourself and you know why you're acting the way you're acting, and you're learning about them and you understand the way they're acting or why they're acting the way they're acting, it gives you more compassion for them, more understanding for them. So that alone right there begins to increase connection, begins to increase that empathy and that understanding between people. So just that awareness, even an awareness, starts to breed more of a connection. You also begin to learn that all the things that used to look like they were like intentional and hurtful and spiteful were actually just a result of somebody not being able to process. So they were stuck with just 2 boxes, and that was the only problem. Because once they get the new boxes, things get a lot easier. Now, the BTG boxes in relationships, like we were talking about with that loved one request, that's how we use it with the communication companions. We're able to give you guys effective communication. For example, that loved one request allows people to make a request of somebody, and then you see what your request is doing to the other person. So then you'll actually see where it rates them. That loved one request is meant to go back and forth between partners so that you both can see how it's affecting another person. So say Sean wants me to go on a big hike. The reason he wants to do it is because he wants to connect with me. but he doesn't know that I'm in massive amounts of pain. When I fill that out and I show him, oh, look, I'm in the red in all of these places over here, he will see, oh, you're hurt, right? Now, before, if I was just to say no, right, it would be like, oh, you don't want to connect with me. You don't care. You never want to do this thing. You never want to do what I want to do, or whatever it is. That would be something that would be hurtful, or vice versa, right? So for example, if I'm wanting to do something with Sean and he's overwhelmed, he can't process it, so he just says no right off the bat. To me, it looks like he doesn't care, and it looks like he doesn't want to help, like be a part of my life, and he doesn't love me. But if I was to ask him straight up, do you even love me? He would look at me like I was a crazy person, because he thought it was incredibly obvious that he was completely devoted and loved me, because the way he felt connected was through function. And he was completing all sorts of functions with me. And so he felt very connected to me. I did not feel connected to him because I needed to feel a certain type of way in order to feel connected. So because I was emotionally processing, I needed to feel like he was present, or I needed to feel like he was happy in order to be able to connect with a vibe that was there. If I didn't feel that, I did not feel connected. So that was a problem between us in our relationship. So he could feel connected through function. I could feel connected through feelings. Now, he could essentially feel connected through feeling good, but only after he could only feel good if he had a function. So I could feel good at function, but I had to feel good in order for it to have a connection either way. So we were both like opposite sides, again, opposite sides of our own neuroverses. And the thing that's really important is BTG applies to everybody. It used to just kind of aim it at neurodiverse relationships, but it's not just neurodiverse relationships. The fact of the matter is everybody has a neuroverse. Everybody has a brain. So if you have a brain, and if your brain is different than your partner, then you could use BTG. And that's the biggest thing that we want everyone to know. It's applicable to everybody. It's not just neurodiverse relationships. If you are in a mixed brain type relationship, so a mixed brain type relationship is just two people that have different brain types. If you're in a mixed brain type relationship, BTG can be for you, because what we do is we help everybody learn about their brain type and learn about what boxes are helpful and applicable to them and where it all fits within the grand map. So there's boxes that are specifically geared towards relationships. So for example, that enrichment box or that loved ones box, that is something where you specifically store your loved ones. Now, for me, I had that on my logic side. I logically understood and knew where to process all my loved ones. Now, emotionally, it was broken on the other side of my brain. So on the other side, it was broken and I was manually processing that. So where I actually would store all my loved ones is in a box that we called the do feel everything, which is what it sounds like. I felt compelled to do and feel everything. I had no shield from feeling everything. I would feel everyone's emotions. I was constantly trying to make everyone around me happy, because if I didn't, I would get punished, because I would feel others' displeasure and others' uncomfort, and I would feel the pain of it as if it was an assault to me, because I was manually processing my emotions. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I didn't know that until September of last year. So we were already 2 years and 9 months into our journey before I learned about that. The first box for me was the baby steps box. That is a crucial box for a relationship. Another one that we learned about is the me box. So I had a me box for the logical side of me, and I didn't have it though in regards to my emotions. So again, my emotions, they weren't separate. They weren't separate and in its own space. They were all in that do feel everything. So I was over there, they were over there, we were all enmeshed, we were all feeling everybody's everything. We were just completely a big mess. And it was just, I was a hot mess and I didn't know it. When we first had our breakthrough, I thought I was neurotypical. I thought that I was an automatic processor. Now, I'm not going to say I am wrong there, because I did automatically process my logic, but I didn't know that I manually processed all my emotion. But I thought I was neurotypical, and that was the furthest thing. So many people come here thinking there is nothing wrong with me. And you're right. There's nothing wrong with anybody that comes here. There is something going wrong in the mind, though. And we talk about this in the materials. It's called cell danger response. And cell danger response is a universal mechanism of the brain. Actually, it's a universal mechanism of any cell that once it detects any type of threat, it kind of throws up these walls and it prevents cell communication. So when that's happening in the brain, this is exactly what disconnects all the different boxes. Cell danger response detects a threat and prevents the neurons from actually sending signals to each other. When this happens within a cluster of neurons or a network, it prevents it from being able to communicate with other areas of the brain. This is like a bridge getting knocked out. If you're on an island and your bridge goes out, you're not able to connect with the mainland. This is going on in the brain all over. It just happened to be that it was primarily happening on my right side with my emotion, and for simplification purposes, on the left side for my husband with his logic. So with all those bridges out, he was having to manually do the work that should be automatic. That's how it affects relationships. You get to use the enrichment box. It helps you process your loved ones in a way that they're meant to be processed in. So for example, the enrichment box is actually for me. So even though I gave him instructions on how to do that with his logic, for his logical side of his brain, the enrichment box for me is applicable as well. I could not see boundaries. And here I was teaching him about boundaries. I didn't realize until my baby steps box that that same chart applied to me. I couldn't do it because my emotions were overwhelming. So with the baby steps box and your me box intact, you need your me box and your enrichment box. And so with those boxes, those are foundational core human boxes. You need them before you can be in a healthy relationship. So when you have all those activated, those are going to help you be able to just be in a relationship and be a better person in that relationship. And like I mentioned before, those communication companions, it's a worksheet designed for two people. Someone fills out the top half and the other person fills out the second half, and you're able to have a structured conversation essentially where nothing is left to assumption and nothing is left to thinking that you said it when you didn't or whatever. There's nothing left to chance. Everything is outlined and you're able to clearly understand it. It works for logic. It also works for emotion. Now, I wanted to answer a couple other questions. So, can BTG work if only one partner is interested? The answer is yes, absolutely. So, the thing that happens when you start working on yourself is you begin to, it creates this butterfly effect. Now, when everybody comes to us at BTG and you're coming for your relationship, essentially you're kind of living in your partner's trash bin unintentionally. You're walking around, stepping on all sorts of their invisible landmines. You don't know how to navigate them. You can't see them. They're invisible. They're only inside your partner's head. So this kind of disorients you. You're scared because you don't know the next time they're going to blow up. Now, for a manual processor who is manually processing their logic, it's going to be landmines rooted in logic. Something that doesn't logically make sense will cause a brain fire. It'll cause those landmines to explode. But because you most likely are automatically processing your logic, you're not going to be aware of those landmines. You're not going to see them. You're not going to know where they are. You're just going to feel disoriented and scared as crap all the time that they're just going to explode over something that you have no idea and see no reason why they would do that. It doesn't make any sense to you, which will then trigger your own emotional landmines as well. Because when you can't make sense and it's freaking you out and you're getting all these huge emotions, it's going to be too much and you won't be able to process your emotions and you won't be able to keep up on them. And then you will be melting down as well. On the flip side, from their perspective, I know that I looked really emotionally unstable to him. He didn't know what emotional landmine he was going to be stepping on either. So he was like tiptoeing around, not knowing, oh, is this person going to explode on me? I have no idea. And I didn't think I was exploding. And the things that I would get upset about, I thought were extremely justified, right? It looked like they were clear from a mile away. He should have known. He should have known that what he did was rude, right? The way he spoke to me. I remember one time he said to me, I can't think for you. I thought that was probably the rudest thing he could have said, because of course I'm thinking, or so I assumed at the time. Also, the way he said it, because he didn't use his tone, and my brain was manually processing body language. So what that looks like for me was body language would hit me in the face from across the room. The second I was there, I couldn't miss it. It felt very automatic to me. It was because my brain wasn't filtering out. So it hit me, and a facial expression could feel like an assault. The wrong body language would send me reeling emotionally, and I would send me into a tizzy. And if he used the wrong tone, oh, it was over. He was manually processing his words. Words were all he could see. Words hit him in the face. He couldn't see past it. So for example, if I used the wrong word, that would blow his brain up because he couldn't see past it. He couldn't be picking up on the tone and the body language. If he noticed it, it definitely wasn't working with the other parts of his brain to interpret what my words actually meant. For example, he said something rude, but to me, it automatically brought emotions with those words. So my brain would infuse emotions with the words he would say. It would compute it with the body language that he was doing and the facial expressions. And then here I am melting down. So he said something to me one time that I can't think for you. I'm thinking he totally knows I know how to think. He's just being a complete and total jerk. From his perspective, because he knew that there was a big process that went into thinking, it would take him, say, 3 days to be able to make a decision about the kids going over to grandma and grandpa's. Because he saw me making quick decisions, he thought I was being flippant and careless. And so he's over here so stressed out, thinking he is responsible for doing all the thinking of not only himself, but for me and for all 4 of our sons. So for him, he was up against this huge daunting task that he wasn't even capable of doing for himself. So when he said, I can't think for you, he was actually pleading with me, I can't think for you. I really need you to pick up an oar and help me, help me paddle this boat. I can't do it for you. And there was no other way for my brain to process those words. It could not fathom that that's how he meant it. And that's what he was saying, because of the different ways that our brain were processing. It created a completely different language that we both were living. So that's another thing that it helps with in the relationships, because as you begin learning about yourself and as you begin learning about your partner, you learn how to navigate those landmines. You start knowing where they are because you start understanding your partner. And as you navigate away from those, you stop creating explosions. Not that it was your fault, because it's not your fault. It's only an issue because they don't know how to process. Just like it's only an issue for me emotionally because I didn't know how to process either. Both of us were dealing with issues simply because we didn't know how to process. And what BTG does is we always give the power back to the individual by helping them learn how to alter their internal reality so it can affect their external reality. So in essence, we don't have to wait for other people to be able to process something. We learn how to process something for ourselves. So we learn how to navigate and get rid of our own landmines so that our partner doesn't have to be worried about walking around on them. But in the process, say, for example, if you're starting this first and your partner's not open to learning about it, that's fine. They'll get there when they get there. What you do in this process, you learn about yourself. You get rid of your own emotional landmines or logic landmines, whatever your brain type is. And then you learn how to navigate around there. So then all of a sudden you're making more sense. You start to become more credible. And their brain is blowing up less often. If it's blowing up less often, then their brain is going to be able to start to calm down. If it's able to calm down, it's more susceptible to being able to absorb information. So as you change yourself, you're naturally fostering an environment that allows you both to be able to make progress. And they take note, because when you start following the advice and the methods of BTG, you end up giving them what they've been asking for all along that you didn't know how to do. You didn't know how to give them what they were wanting. Say they wanted space, but you couldn't do it because, for example, you needed to be able to process something. You needed to be able to talk about something in order for you to be able to move on. Or you thought that when they were shutting you out, saying, no, I can't talk about this right now. For me, I thought that he was just being abusive and manipulative and just, being disrespectful, right? I mean, he would even tell me to shut up. And I'm like, you can't talk to me that way. We're talking about this right now. But really what was happening was his brain couldn't actually handle what was happening. He couldn't process it. So it was blowing up, and me pushing it was like pouring gasoline on a fire. And so he was already in a compromised situation. I just couldn't fathom that me talking was causing that much of an issue. So when you get to learn about those landmines and navigate away from it, and you start making more sense, they naturally just start to open up and trust. And that's how it ends up getting to both partners. We always recommend starting with yourself, because it's the most important thing. Everyone comes here and they're drowning to some degree. We want everyone to put on their own life vest. We want everyone to learn how to swim first, and then you can help others. You can't go in and dive in after somebody who's drowning if you don't even know how to swim. So first you get your life vest on, then you get pulled out of the water, then you start learning how to swim, and then you go in after the people. So that's the steps of how it can help when only one partner is interested. Now, the next question, I believe we already answered this: is BTG appropriate for all types of relationships or specifically neurodiverse relationships? The answer is it's for anybody who has a brain. So if you have a neuroverse inside your head, which you all do, you all have a brain. And if you are in a relationship with somebody who doesn't have the same brain as you, then you need BTG. So that's as simple as it gets. Yes, everyone needs BTG. The next question is, how does BTG differ from traditional therapy or counseling? So traditional methods, they often focus on symptom management, and they think that if they don't see a symptom on the outside, then it's taken care of and it's fine. This is a huge problem within the mental health industry as well. That's why people are assigning medications and everything like that. I'm not going to sit here and condone medications. Medications can be completely amazing and wonderful. However, I have seen people get overly medicated and turned into zombies because they were not able to identify anything in particular, and they were trying to just medicate somebody to put them out of their misery, but it was never addressing the underlying root cause. BTG focuses on a more holistic approach. And what we do is we help to look at the whole picture and see how everything fits within it. And when we do that, we don't need to do any symptom management. We go straight to the root and we fix the root. Then there's just no issues. Like I was saying earlier, it's only an issue because we can't process something. So it's only an issue if I can't make sense of something, right? It's only an issue if he can't make sense of something logically. If he was able to logically make sense of it, it wouldn't be an issue for him. Now, this is not grounds for saying, oh, well, this is your fault because you just can't process. So I'm just going to go in and stomp all over your landmines because that's your fault. You need to get rid of your landmines. No. BTG is based on the concept that we all love each other and want to connect at the root. So when we learn that somebody has landmines and it's somebody you love, naturally you're just going to navigate away from it if it's within your power. If you're also navigating your own neuroverse and you're struggling and maybe drowning yourself, are you going to end up on their landmines sometimes? Yeah. Is it an accident? Absolutely. If you're doing it intentionally, that's wrong. If it's an accident, you're just doing your best and it doesn't matter. So that's something that's really important. We want people to not feel bad about the pain that they've caused people in the past, or even the pain that they might cause them in the future as you're learning, because you're a human and that's okay. Mistakes going beyond control, and that's where it's going to be when you learn about that. But it's learning about the holistic approach so that it's no longer an issue. We don't have to go in and put band-aids all over the place and tape everybody up. We go in and just fix it. We just address the root cause. And when I say fix it, I want to make sure it's really clear. I'm not talking about fixing broken individuals. We're not talking about any one of us being wrong or being broken, because that can be something that is hurtful and offensive. When we mention that something is broken and something is wrong, essentially it's the fact that cell danger response is on and it's still stuck on, signaling that there's a threat happening when there really isn't a threat. The threat's only there because that box isn't connected. So when we connect the box, it's no longer a threat. It's the power company in fire season. So when it's in fire season, they go and they shut off the power. They turn off the power grid to prevent a fire. That's kind of like what cell danger response did in the brain. But instead of turning the power back on, it kept it off in a lot of areas. So if you lost power to your house and you had to all of a sudden manually make do with everything in your house, and you had to manually wash your clothes, manually go get your water, manually do all these things that were automatic with your electricity, that would prevent a significant impact in your life. Now, if you were able to just turn the lights back on and get it to just go, how easy would that be? There's no strong arming. You just go back to being able to function. That's essentially what's going on with these neural networks. Now, sometimes these neural networks were shut off in utero, sometimes early life. Sometimes it happens because of PTSD. Sometimes it happens because we're in these relationships. So you might have been completely, totally fine before you got in this relationship, and then you turned into a hot mess. What we know is happening is cell danger response is happening because there was a traumatic thing that happened in the brain at some degree at the neural level. So when we go in and reconnect those things, we can undo it just like we can go rewire it just like it had gotten unwired. So it doesn't matter if you came with this wiring. It doesn't matter if you got this wiring recently. It doesn't matter if you got it 15 years ago or anything. The same rewiring process happens for everybody. It can be just as fast for everyone as well. That was one of those huge benefits that we learned with Sean, because for him, he actually had got a diagnosis about 8 years into our marriage that he was on the autism spectrum. At the time, they called it Asperger's. And for him, it was a big relief because we had been fighting an invisible fight and we didn't know what it was. And it was so scary. And then all of a sudden we found out, oh, it's just this. And we thought, oh, it's like somebody turned the lights on and we thought we were cage fighting this monster, but it was really just a cat. And we're like, this is great. Now I just have to learn how to take care of a cat. But if you've ever seen a little toddler like squeeze a cat until their eyeballs came out, that was me. Okay. I didn't know how to take care of a cat. I tried really hard to know how to take care of a cat, but I didn't know all the things that I was doing to harm. And I even ended up using his diagnosis as a weapon, even though that wasn't my intent. I just knew that we had issues in our marriage and I wanted to resolve them. And because he was the one with an official diagnosis that was describing, or that would describe that, oh, you have a deficiency when it came to the social realm, then my brain said, well, you're the one that's abnormal. So you are the one that we need to change or work around you. And that was not something that he appreciated. In the times where he was like super low, he would be like, yeah, I know the problem's me. And I thought, see, I got him to admit it. He knows and understands. But in the other times where he was clinging to his reality, he was like, no, I'm not the problem. Because the thing is, neither one of you are the problem. The problem is invisible. The problem is our neuroverses and the way we process. That's it. It's as simple as that. His reality was completely real to him. It was just incomplete. Just like my reality was completely real to me. It was just incomplete. We did not have all the pieces. We did not have the full puzzle. Once we were able to learn about our breakthrough, it gave us more pieces to the puzzle. It gave us more of a full picture. So it's like if you were doing a puzzle and you're looking at it and say you finally make out your own face on this puzzle, you say, no, this is my puzzle. This is what this is. And he's done this puzzle and he's made it out and he can see himself, right? Those two don't look like they go together. It doesn't even look like the pieces fit together because guess what? They don't fit together right there. There's more pieces in the middle. And once we got those pieces in the middle, we were able to see how our puzzles related to each other and that they were actually a part of the same puzzle. We both were missing the full picture. We needed more puzzle pieces to be able to see it truly and clearly. We were both not wrong, but we were both wrong at the same time. I thought he was a monster. He thought I was a monster. I thought he was a narcissist. He thought I was a narcissist. That wasn't actually true. That wasn't true. He wasn't a narcissist. I wasn't a narcissist. But what we experienced, the feelings that we felt, and the fact that we couldn't process, that was true. And our experience was true. So coming to terms with our own processing also helped us realize that if our realities are real, then the other person's reality has to be real too. So if we want to honor our own, if we want somebody to honor ours, that we need to be also able to honor theirs. So that is another thing that you'll learn along the way. And as you go on this journey, you start kind of like in your partner's trash. When you get here, you're both probably in your trashes going crazy. As you make more sense, you kind of move over to their me box because you start to make sense and you can fit there more comfortably and you're not blowing up their brain. The final landing space that we want you to get to is that loved one box. That's where you belong in their brain. You don't belong in their me box. They don't belong in your me box. They don't belong in your do feel everything box. Everyone belongs in that loved one box, in that place in your mind. And once you can actually get people filed away there properly, you're able to have a more loving and connected relationship where you're able to understand the other person in a more intimate and connected way.
I think there's an ongoing challenge when we are new to understanding our brain processing type, or even if we're still on that journey and we're trying to manage the realities of life until we've reached the place you're describing that we're all trying to get to. A lot of times, the information we're given for doing that can seem invalidating of what we are struggling with because our brain processing isn't there yet. It's still on its journey. Not that there is any magic answer. I see this as an ongoing situation that many face. And so I just wanted to give some voice to that.
Okay. So as far as, you're talking about not feeling validated in the process that you're in right now? Is that what you were saying?
No, that when we are in this process of discovery of BTG to brain processing, once we've reached that, we've understood our brain type, we've got the tools on board, things are beginning to automate. Before we get there, there's this growth process, and we have to maintain the journey when there's still quite a bit of adversity that we're faced with. This ongoing struggle of landmines all over the place as our partner is continually like, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. So while it's true that with these boxes, once you grasp them and you get that black and white perspective and you get the color and you're able to apply it and you're able to make those connections. Now it's important. I was actually talking with Sean today. These boxes that we're doing, the brain is so powerful, and all you have to do is think a thought in order to rewire. But so many modalities are all about the leaves and the trees. So they're focusing on all these thoughts. So it ends up being like more manual processing. We try to go to the root. Now, when it comes to being able to make these connections in the brain, these boxes are boxes that are, yes, there's some that are there already, but something he mentioned to me today is it doesn't matter if that neural network is there or not, because you can actually create it yourself. So say it's out, say it's gone, say it doesn't even exist in your brain, say it was damaged and it's not there. You can actually create with the intention of your understanding and the new knowledge that you're learning and everything like that. Like you can add that there. But like you were saying, the journey is long. It can be very long, that process up until that point. So when you make that connection, the rewiring happens really fast and you can get a lot of relief quickly. You can make a substantial amount of progress. There's people that can get it super fast as they're learning it. And, you know, we had breakthroughs. I would have breakthroughs with people in a couple hours. Sometimes I would go through and teach them all one-on-one, and would have life-changing transformations with people over a 3-hour period for a manual processor. It was harder with hyper processors or those who are manually processing emotions because they tend to be more complex. But it can happen in 3 hours. It can happen in a week. It can happen in a month. It can happen in a year. It can take 3 years. It could take any amount of time for people to get to that point that they get it and connect and identify with it. And then that's when that happens. So what you're saying, Susan, I'm so glad you brought that up because it is really important. I don't want people to think that there's something wrong with them or that their journey to that place is not valid, because everyone's journey is different and all journeys are valid. And in the process, though, we want to help you all to have some sort of relief in the process. Now, you might not get to that place where everything's clicking right away, but with using the tools, there should be a measurable amount of relief as you use them. It doesn't mean it fixes everything, but you should have some sense of relief. And that is a sign that something is working there, that something is doing its job, and that it's okay. Now, when it becomes consistent and like overall effective on a regular basis, that's when it is considered installed. But if you're able to use it and get relief, that is a sign something is working. And we want people to get that relief all along the way. That's one of the reasons why we made the new charts, the communication companions and the baby steps chart, because we want people to be able to experience relief even without learning a lot of materials, even without learning and going through the entire program. We want people to get instant relief. But I don't want anyone to ever feel like their journey isn't valid, because the journey can be very long and very hard for a lot. There's a lot of hurt that's gone on over these years with all the different types of relationships that we've been in. And also there's been a lot of damage that's happened even before the relationships that we are in. So there's a lot of cleaning up to do once we start this journey. So it's kind of like getting in a big bad car accident and breaking your femur or this or that. If you have sustained a lot of injuries, you're not going to just come out. You wouldn't expect that to happen the next day. You're not going to be able to just walk right out of the ER. There's going to be a period where you're in shock, right? There's going to be a period where it's sore, and there's going to be a period of healing, and that's okay. But the thing is, we don't want it to be like that impact every day, like you're getting hit by a car over and over again. We want that to stop once you get to BTG. And that's what we want to help everyone with. BTG is a big journey for a lot of people, and we know it takes a lot of support. Right now, we still have pods. I know there's several people on here that are actually in a pod. For those who are not in a pod, I'm not sure if you have heard about our pods, but what we have a form of support where it's like a group chat. This is where we came up with this concept of being able to share with people and support people so that they're able to get the support that they need. So you're struggling, you don't know what to do, how to navigate. You have a group of people that understand. You don't need to go get judged by the people that don't understand you, whether it's family or friends who have good intentions, but they don't understand the dynamic of your relationship. So this isn't coaching. This isn't access to a coach. This isn't your pod leaders. It's going to be run by a pod leader and 2 assistants, and they are not there to coach, but they oversee to make sure that the topics are staying on topic and BTG kosher. So it's a place where you're able to feel safe knowing that the information you're getting is in alignment with BTG and that it's okay. We have 2 forums. We have one where it's just the PTP pods, and then we also have another one where it's Inner Circle. And Inner Circle is where you're able to cost share a package of personal one-on-one coaching. So for example, right now we have that limited time couples pod where couples were able to all join, and they are able to each have their own personal session. It gets recorded and the other couples get to watch it. What this does is this helps to foster an environment where people are able to see their problems play out in others in a non-emotional way. And so you're able to see that other people are struggling, right? So for example, it's good for my husband to see, oh, there's other hypers like you, or for me to be like, oh, other Mannies are just like you, or to see the same type of problem and dynamic play out. And you're able to see without having that pressure be on just you. And you're also able to get one-on-one help. We don't have the option for couples. It was just a one-time thing, but we do have individual pods, individual IC pods, if people wanted to do that and join there. IC stands for inner circle. This is where you cost share. These are just a couple of the testimonials and the different options. This one is something I would jump on because for the basics pod, if you do it monthly, it's $65 a month. It's going to be going up to $75 a month. This is if you buy it at the 3-month increments, you can get it for $55 a month. If you buy 6 months at a time, it's an equivalent to $50 a month. 12 months, it's only $45 a month. And if you wanted to go lifetime, you could actually buy lifetime access of support 24/7 to people who understand you on this journey, and it's $2,000. So if people join it right now, they will actually be able to lock in those prices and lock in all the benefits that everybody has. So that's something that we're really wanting people to do and encourage. Things are going to be changing. BTG is restructuring in a good way. We're just learning more about how the boxes fit together. And we've had over 30 breakthroughs alone this year. We first started out with just 2 boxes. Now we have over 30, and we need to be able to develop them and get them out. And that involves growing the business side of BTG, making development, doing courses, creating content. And that's not something we can do alone. We need to get our course out there that we currently have and be able to fuel more funding back into the BTG business so we can get things out. We have been able to learn so much in the last 9 months. Since February, it really started to get really crazy. We just had a breakthrough on Saturday where we probably learned about 6 more boxes. And it was a huge download. Every time we have another breakthrough, we keep thinking, this is foundational. People need to know this, but we can't get it out to everybody because we're so bogged down with all the breakthroughs that we keep getting, but also what is required. But a benefit though for being in the IC pods is because they're one-on-one. Also, if you were to do one-on-one sessions with us and private coaching, you gain access to new information that we feel would be helpful for you. We will share that with you. We will share whatever we have with you that is not found anywhere else. It's not available to any other people anywhere. It's not available to the public. Sometimes it's so hot off the press, there is no press. So that's one of the perks of being in those IC pods. Sometimes we share some things in the PTP pods, but that's mostly for the people that were there since the beginning and are mentally prepared for the more advanced things. But definitely won't be that way in the future when it comes to PTP pods. But in the IC pods, it's definitely something that we are able to do because it's a one-on-one thing. I would definitely recommend getting on this and joining as soon as you can. Now, this is a really informal enrollment page, but people can go and click on this and it takes you to a place where you would pay for it and sign up. So there's that option there if you wanted to do that. You can also join in for the IC pod one right now. This is something that we're doing for people. They can either do a 6-month membership or $270 a month monthly. And you can click on this and you also would get 2 bonus private sessions with both Sean and I if you did the 6-month paid in full option. We also work with coach financing. So you can finance this. If you wanted to do this where you were to pay up front all the way, you could go to our coach financing page and get a loan to pay for your thing outright. So you can get the benefits while doing a month-to-month thing as well. So you'll be able to have a low monthly fee, but also get the benefits of paying in full so you can get those free sessions. So that's something I encourage people to do because they're not going to be around and things are going to be changing. But for the current people that are currently locked in with memberships and everything, things are going to be staying the way it is for them and their benefits are going to be there. So unless they're in a limited time pod, which I know our couples pod was limited, but we're actually going to be able to give them options to extend, but it won't be limited to just them. Anyways,
I can speak to how being in a pod group has basically accelerated my BTG journey because of the community experience there and the opportunities to learn from other people's growth experience in BTG, to benefit from the questions they ask, to benefit from the insights that they experience, to share what I'm learning and share what I'm experiencing. The more I have the opportunity to interact freely about these concepts and principles, the more it helps my brain understand them more clearly. And as that happens, my brain becomes more resilient over time, laying down those neural networks, laying down those pathways in my brain, and helping me to see things I didn't see before, understand things I didn't understand before, or at least not as clearly as I could further down the journey. But without that opportunity to share and be heard in my experience and learn alongside others who are learning the same thing that I'm learning in real time, and just be having that more intimate connection with, I don't know that I would have had the learning and growth that I've had in BTG.
awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's something that we really want to foster with the pods. We really want people to be able to do this, to be able to share their experiences, to be able to strengthen others as they're sharing their experiences, to be able to help lay down those foundations for those neural networks and see how it's working for other people. Because when you get to see how it's working for other people, it also helps you to see how it can work for you. I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's been a great Q&A, and hopefully it's been helpful for you guys. But thanks for everyone for coming. And thank you for all your contributions. So we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.